he is as well. We are underway here in our semifinals this morning. Hallowed Fountain to begin. Rocha going to play a Temple of Silence. A little scry action, keep it on top, pass it back to Sullivan, who does play his cards upside down so the opponent can read them. Plays an island, pass it back to Jerret, who will play a Godless Shrine before passing the turn back. No blue mana yet here for Rocha, as Sullivan will play a Temple of Deceit. He'll scry. That card's going to the bottom. He'll pass it back over to Jerret, who will untap and take a draw. Now there is a blue source. It's a Temple of Deceit. He gets to scry. Of course, since we're in our control mirror, it's all about who misses the first land drop, and it is Adrian.
What I really like what's happening right now is Jerret actually has a Thoughtseize in hand that he is not casting. He's waiting until he has something to set up because Adrian has the threat of counterspells in his deck.
There's certainly no rush here for Jerret to get moving. Sullivan able to draw a Temple of Enlightenment. Maybe that can help him find more lands, as Rocha has 5 lands so far, and it looks like he's going to be the first one to miss. Let's see if he wants to cast a spell or not. Is it time to maybe fire off this Thoughtseize? He will fire it off. Will Adrian maybe try to counter this if he has a Dissolve? He's going to show Aetherling, a Jace, another Jace, a Revelation, along with a Supreme Verdict, a Detention Sphere, and an Essence Scatter.
So I imagine this is a selection between Sphinx's Revelation and Aetherling. Removing Adrian's Aetherling makes the game a lot easier from Jerret's perspective to play, as he no longer has to worry about there being enormous consequences for him tapping out. Of course, Adrian can eventually reset and get this back, but and the Sphinx's Revelation is a big long-term threat as well. So since Detention Sphere, Supreme Verdict, and Essence Scatter don't matter very much, and Adrian has redundant Jaces, I would imagine this is between Aetherling and Revelations.
Decisions here for Jerret. Should be interesting to see what he wants to take. He's going to go with a Jace. So that'll go bye-bye. Adrian, if he had been able to draw the 4th land on time, he would have been able to resolve a Jace against just a black mana being available. But he does have 4 mana now, so we'll see if he actually tries to run out this Jace here into the face of potential counter magic. And the answer is a resounding yes. Here is Jace, Architect of Thought.
Yeah, Adrian needs to find lands. He can't afford to just pass and say go with Jerret having a mana advantage.
Well, he did just that. Turns over 3 lands, Temple of Deceit, Hallowed Fountain in one pile, Mutavault in the other. Sullivan has not played a land yet this turn. So he's weighing his decision pretty carefully here. There's a chance that he may want Mutavault, a card that he has used to great effect when playing this deck.
With Revelations in hand and Adrian with no lands in play, it's really hard to turn down the 2-land pile, and Adrian agrees.
This is the Temple of Deceit. A little scry action here in just a moment for Sullivan. That card looks like it may be going to the bottom, but he's actually consulting his hand quite a bit here to decide if he wants this card or not. And it will go to the bottom before passing it back over to Rocha, who will untap. He will take a draw. It's a Jace of his own, so he's going to resolve this. A little -2 action coming for him. We'll see what he's able to turn over.
And pretty fortunate for Jerret to draw Jace that turn, especially after Adrian elected not to take the Mutavault pile last turn.
An island, a Detention Sphere, and a Temple of Silence here for Rocha. Sullivan will decide how to split them, as I don't think it's a 3-0 pile at this point.
No, this is a little aggressive for a 3-0.
A little too early in the morning, perhaps, for that. Temple of Silence versus is what Sullivan does decide.
Jerret just checking to see if he would have to discard a hand size, I think, if he took the 2-card pile.
Yeah, hasn't played a land just yet either. And he will play the island and pass the turn back over to Sullivan. Adrian will take an untap here. See if he wants to cash in Jace or take it up first. There's the potential for him to cash it in the Detention Sphere, the other Jace. Maybe sensing a little bit of weakness on Jerret's side, but he's definitely going to take some pause on this turn on what he wants to do.
Some of it depends on whether or not Adrian anticipates having to discard if he draws 2 cards with Jace right now.
He's a little unsure, but he is going to go ahead and cash in Jace. So 3 cards coming in a Fated Retribution, a Sphinx's Revelation, and a Cyclonic Rift. So a couple of his 1-ofs do show up to the party, but part of the reason you're able to play 1-ofs in this deck is because you go through your deck a lot when you play.
Yeah, and I spoke to Adrian about the Cyclonic Rift, and he said, you know, it felt a lot like powerful in the same spots that Fated Retribution is powerful in, while also being able to be cast early in the game to some effect.
So you see a couple of cards going to go to the bottom here. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Detention Sphere take care of Jace. there that is. Gonna slow down Rocha's card drawing just a little bit, so goodbye Architect of Thought. Sullivan still without a land drop on this particular turn, but we know he has one.
Not a lot in the way of detention sphere targets in each player's deck in the pre-boarded games, with the exception of Planeswalkers. So even though getting rid of the Jace there is fairly anemic, there's not much else to do with the detention sphere.
Sullivan going to take 2 off the Hollow Fountain to represent counter magic here, so the ability to represent a syncopated dissolve, something of that nature, before passing the turn back over to Rocha. And again, Jerret did cast a copy of Thoughtseize early in this game, so he's got a pretty good idea of what Sullivan does have in his hand. Things have changed a little bit, but he took the time to write stuff down, so he has information that he is working with.
He knows that he can't run the Aetherling out there because of the Essence Scatter in Adrian's hand.
Well, he could.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be good. He understands that there would be negative consequences were he to do that.
There you go. So what to do if you're Rocha? He's drawing a lot of his anti-aggro elements in Supreme Verdicts and Detention Spheres in this particular game. Also has an Elspeth, which is not a great card in the mirror. He's going to deploy Elspeth right now. We'll see if Sullivan wants to try to stop that. If he doesn't care, he does give a thumbs up. So 3 soldier tokens will be coming, and now this is the first thing that Adrian does need to take care of.
Although again, Jerret is aware of the presence of Aetherling in Adrian's hand right now, so it's a pretty big risk he's taking.
I agree. I'm a little bit surprised to see him just deploy this Elspeth in the face of potential Aetherling. As you do see, Sullivan has a Syncopate in his hand now. And if Adrian is able to deploy Aetherling at this point, with 1 blue mana available, it wouldn't be the worst spot to be in. It would be a touch risky, but as you did mention, there is an Elixir of Immortality in his deck, so it's not the end-all be-all in case anything does go wrong.
It appears that Adrian does not have a 7th untap land right now, though.
He does play Temple of Enlightenment and is going to scry. That card's going to stay on top. And Adrian will pass the turn back. Not underneath a ton of pressure just yet, as Rocha does pick up a copy of Sphinx's Revelation. He's going to start with the soldier tokens in for 3. Sullivan's going to go down to 15.
This is pretty common in the mirror match. You see Elspeth doing a little bit of work. Not too hard for blue-white to sweep all of this up with Detention Sphere or Jace or Supreme Verdict, but it does compel Adrian to find an answer.
Yeah, it's funny because Elspeth doesn't provide the most pressure, but it provides enough pressure that, 6/1/1s right now, it's like, okay, I actually do have to do something and get moving here.
Yeah, it's a board, and it speaks a lot to Elspeth's power, where this is the matchup where it's probably at its weakest, and it's still an impactful card.
Yeah. Even though Rocha's missing some land drops, and Sullivan started by missing some on his end as well, both players kind of battling here. Here's a Revelation. And Rocha says, that's fine. You get yourself 3 life and 3 cards. Well, we think it's fine. Jerret wanted him to tap his mana, so it will be a dissolve on the Revelation. Kind of lowering the shields a little bit here. Only 1 blue mana at the ready, so don't have to worry about another counterspell, presumably, if you're Sullivan.
Yeah, this again is potentially opening up the door for Adrian to land Aetherling.
Dissolve, the scry's going to stay on top. Now Sullivan's going to untap all of those lands. He'll take a draw. So having a quick update here for you guys at home. You see Sullivan's going to tap some mana. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's an Aetherling, so he felt that that was very important to resolve with 2 blue mana available. Kevin Wang does win game number 1, Mono Black Devotion, up a game over Mono Blue, which is something you felt would probably happen.
Yeah, I think the Mono Blue deck picks up some ability to fight a different fight in the post-board games, but game 1, their curve of creatures just isn't very good. And their exposure to Pack Rat, especially on the draw, is very high.
So Sullivan with an Aetherling out there on the table, you're going to get a little Elspeth action here. Now, this is the interesting thing, because with Aetherling, he could just give it -1/+1 and it would still survive and still be able to block one of these soldier tokens, or he can choose to blink it out.
Yeah, but with 2 mana up, this is possible. It's possible that all Jerret's trying to do here is get Adrian to spend a mana doing whatever, and then resolve his own Aetherling. Because again, he knows Essence Scatter is in Adrian's hand.
It's true.
And Adrian knows that Jerret knows that there's an Essence Scatter in Adrian's hand. So This is definitely alarms need to be going off for Adrian right now.
Does he just let Aetherling die? He's got to be scared of another one, of Jerret's coming into play, so. Starts with this happening, blinks it out. Does take 6. And now Rocha's going to take the opportunity to resolve his. Now this is where things get a little bit difficult with Sullivan at 9. There's an opposing Aetherling in play.
And Jerret already has a pretty advanced board with a bunch of Elspeth tokens as well.
Yep. Adrian will draw a card. Now he's got to work his way out of this situation. That's going to be pretty tough.
There are a couple things that can happen in this spot that give Adrian a little bit of game. He can find Azorius Charms to gain life, or use it to fog an opposing Aetherling. Jerret, of course, has the same tools with various removal spells. But it will be 2 ships passing in the night.
He's going to blink Aetherling out. He's going to cast Supreme Verdict. Aetherling is going to blink itself. Verdict will resolve. Adrian's going to play Temple of Enlightenment. He'll do a little bit of scrying here.
Just a very tough spot again. Neither of these decks really afford the opportunity to kill an Aetherling at least game 1. So Adrian is going to have to manage this rather than win the game.
Tough spot to see these players be able to resolve Aetherlings pretty early in the game. Just kind of going for it and hoping the other player didn't have one. Rocha, of course, knew that Sullivan had his much earlier from Thoughtseize. Sullivan did not know that Rocha had his, however.
Yeah. But that Elspeth turn was a pretty loud indicator.
Yeah.
I'm willing to minus Elspeth here when I'm threatening to go ultimate next turn to get you to spend 1 mana.
Yep. The big question there is he just supposed to let it go? I mean, we're looking at a much longer game that way, and I don't think that Adrian actually has his elixir just yet, but it's something worth considering, as now Aetherling looks like it's going to go unblockable style, and it comes. The question is how much?
Well, if Adrian didn't have an answer to both Elspeth and the tokens at the time, he probably couldn't afford to let Aetherling go.
You see Jerret doing Aetherling math. Now, managing an Aetherling is always an interesting situation.
And Adrian's list only with 2 copies of Azorius Charm.
Okay.
There's the Cyclonic Rift, there's the Disperse. Those can essentially fog an attack.
Fated Retribution can get a little bit interesting as well. I mean, it's very expensive, but it can get a little interesting. You see 1 pump here from Aetherling. Rocha going to deal 5, going to put Sullivan down to 4. This makes it so that he can actually leave up a bunch of mana, and he doesn't have to actually pump Aetherling anymore to get the job done. He can just use 1 unblockable activation to attempt to present lethal.
Although Rocha's hand is a bit of a mess here. I mean, it's multiple Detention Spheres, multiple Supreme Verdicts. Not really helpful in this race. So
he's all in
Yeah.
on this Aetherling to get the job done. No counter spells over there or anything, I don't think. He doesn't have a lot of blue mana either in this game, as you see. He's got a Temple Deceit and 2 islands.
it's not inconceivable for Adrian to win from this spot again. Azorius Charm provides a lot of help, as do his various bounce spells.
He's got a lot of makeshift fogs.
Yeah. Even giving the pacing of the game right now, Elixir of Mortality is another turn as he gets Adrian to 9. So he is definitely behind the gun here a little bit, but it is not impossible for him to pull this out. But there is a lot of pressure on him to answer this Aetherling turn after turn, as it is now lethal with no additional mana required from Jerret.
Yep. That's the really tough part, I think, is that all it takes is a blue mana. This looks like a Revelation, probably. Yeah. This is going to be a Rev for 5, so this is going to allow him to go up to 9, which is in the comfort zone, as it were. Undoing the first Aetherling attack. Rocha taking a look at his hand. He has a Revelation of his own over there. He says that's fine. So 5 cards, but more importantly, 5 life coming here for Adrian.
Yeah, it is a curious feature of the blue-white Esper mirrors where it's so much about land drops and card advantage and Jace, and sometimes the game shifts to this place where gaining life is the thing that matters the most when both players have Aetherling.
Adrian going to come in here for 4. Going to put Rocha down to 14. See if he has a land to play. He just drew a bunch of cards. I'd like to assume that he does. Not a guarantee, of course, but...
We've watched Adrian draw a lot of cards this weekend. I watched him draw 20 with his...
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. That's fun.
Yeah.
Looks like it might be time to discard. Rocha's going to resolve a Revelation for 2 first. Shields are down. He wants his 2 cards, knowing that it is presumably safe to do this against just straight blue-white.
Yeah, I mean, the things that could happen to the Aetherling right now are Adrian could tap out for a Disperse or a Cyclonic Rift, but Jerret would then have the option of either simply redeploying his Aetherling or using the opportunity that Adrian would present by tapping out to Detention Sphere Adrian's Aetherling. So there are minor risks here by tapping out, but Jerret can manage both of them.
The interesting thing that you did mention is the fact that Adrian could disperse and he'd leave the shields down on his own Aetherling, and that gives us a potentially get a Detention Sphere. But I think that might be what Adrian wants.
Yeah, because Jerret would have to choose between one or the other.
Yeah, yeah. Either redeploying or casting D-Sphere. And there's a chance that that would be an exchange that that Adrian would be very, very happy about. You see he's going to discard Essence Scatter here. Either way, all of that discussion for naught. You saw Rocha pick up a couple cards, among them a copy of Opportunity.
Yeah, I believe he has 1 main deck copy.
Yeah. The 5th Rev, as it were.
Occasionally a sideboarded card.
Yep. More often in blue-white than Esper, though.
Yeah. Much harder to play Opportunity in a deck where your lands are coming to play tapped. It's already a big opportunity cost to play an Opportunity as it is. When your 6th land is regularly coming to play tapped, it's very rough.
There is the powerful card drawer, M14 Limited All-Star, arguably the best card in that format.
Yeah. Compelling and rich.
If you like to draw cards, you've come to the right place. And hey, you can even be a nice card. You can be a nice guy and give 4 cards to your opponent, which I have done before.
When they've had 4 or fewer cards in their deck?
You nailed it. I'm not that nice, but I am pretty nice.
Surprise! I have a gift for you.
So Godless Shrine will come in to play tapped, and we're coming into the red zone. The question is, how much will it be? Last time we saw Rocha attack for 5, so just 1 Aetherling activation. Now it looks like we're not going to see an attack for 5. We'll see an attack for 4, so.
Yeah, the complexity here is that you can tell Jerret wants to basically set up this shot where he doesn't spend mana this turn, and then next turn he presents lethal with his Aetherling. But Adrian has some life gain effects that muck this up. For example, he can draw Elixir and gain life. Again, the Aetherling shot's not lethal. If he draws a Mutavault, he could potentially last breath his own Mutavault. That gets him to 9. So there are things that make it complicated. I understand Jerret's instinct of not wanting to spend more mana than he has to, but he may not necessarily be able to set up a 1-turn Aetherling shot because Adrian has enough ways to gain life to distort whether or not this Aetherling hit is necessarily lethal the following turn.
And speaking of Mutavault, that Sullivan's land drop for the turn. So the last breath plus Mutavault play is available. You see Sullivan's going to attack for only 4 here. So again, it is all about Aetherling management. Which player wants to invest the most amount of mana into it? This is an opportunity. So you saw Sullivan, his unwillingness to tap any mana on his own turn. This speaks of a loud Sphinx's Revelation. Yeah.
And speaking of gaining 4 life.
A little more than that, chances are. Right now he's trying to balance exactly how much he wants to gain, because in this situation he wants to be able to gain enough life to stay out of range while also being able to save his Aetherling and maybe counter this opportunity, because he has a Syncopate in his hand as well. You see exactly how he's setting up his mana. This could be another ref for 5, pushing him up to 9, which is out of Aetherling range.
Yeah, 4 is the minimum requirement in my mind, because 4 is what gets him to 9, which means Aetherling is no longer lethal. I would be stunned if we saw it for less than that, unless Adrian has some jockeying with multiple bounce spells he wants to try on this Aetherling.
Yeah, we could see a wild plan here. This is honestly the most unsure I've seen Adrian of his plays when we've watched him all weekend or over the past couple of weekends. Just treading pretty carefully here.
Well, I think part of the reason is Adrian is so clock conscious in the Swiss rounds. We've seen him play very fast to avoid draws, but here the round is untimed, so Adrian can spend an extra minute thinking over these plays where normally he's willing to bat 95% on his accuracy to play a lot faster.
Opportunity is going to draw 1, 2, 3. A hero's downfall among the cards that are drawn. That's probably the most interesting of the cards, as it can muck up Sullivan's Aetherling. As Adrian's going to do a little bit of discarding here. So Revelation did put him up to 10, so Aetherling is not lethal just yet. Looks like these might be the 7 cards that he wants to keep. Maybe those are the ones he's going to discard. We'll see. But he's definitely going to set up a game plan because he's ahead on cards. He's not ahead on life just yet.
Yeah, I've seen this with Adrian before where he sets aside, after he revs and has to discard, he sets aside the cards that mean something.
Yeah.
And then let's say there's 9 cards left over. Then he looks at his now 9-card hand and decides which 2 additional cards he's going to discard. You see him doing this here right now. I believe he quickly set aside 3 lands that he doesn't really need. He picked up 8 cards, and now he's trying to figure out which of these 8 cards he needs to discard as well.
And it looks like Syncopate is the one that's going to go to the bin along with those lands. So Syncopate's shelf life is long gone.
The game is about other things now.
It certainly is. They'll pass it back to Rocha, who gets to untap. His hand is still a mess right now. He's got a bunch of lands, a bunch of D-spheres, a bunch of verdicts, and just one, I would say, relevant card in Hero's Downfall.
He picked up a Jace as well, and that can be helpful too. But committing mana at this point for another card draw is fraught with some peril because Jerret never knows when his mana is going to be overwhelmed, and drawing additional cards may not be of that much help.
So it's a game again of, all right, Aetherling, how much, how many do I want to attack for? How much mana do I want to use on this turn? That's the tough part. He's going to make this unblockable to get by Mutavault. A little surprised to see the unblockable activation now, as I would rather see him just attack straight up and force Adrian actually to activate Mutavault.
Correct. Yeah, that's a small thing, but all the mana that Jerret can save is really critical. So if he attacks and Adrian goes to animate his Mutavault, at that point he can make Aetherling unable to block. It also potentially allows Jerret to do something like Hero's Downfall of the Mutavault. I think it's unlikely he wants to do that, but it's at least an option on the table.
I agree. Also, if Adrian's activating Mutavault, that's 1 less blue mana he has available too.
Yeah, he's incurring some risks as well.
Quick update on the other match. Brad Thiessen with Mono Blue has tied it up, so Mono Black and Mono Blue are going to a third one while we're still in the first tier, but that's not much of a surprise.
No.
Okay, so this is the last breath on a Mutavault, so he's opening himself up to getting Hero's Downfall here, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, Jerret, yep, there you go. Set that Temple of Deceit aside. That could have been really ugly. There is the Hero's Downfall. Now Adrian has to play a wildly different game.
Yeah.
Last breath on the Mutavault. He's going to bite the dust. He's going to go up to 7, Will Sullivan. But he's without an Aetherling anymore. That's in the graveyard, which is a better place to be than underneath the Detention Sphere because of Elixir of Immortality. But now things are going to get seriously difficult.
Yeah, still a huge shot. I guess Adrian felt he really needed to be mana efficient there. Pretty big risk, but it's possible he can't beat the Hero's Downfall anyway because it's too damaging to the race.
Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility. Here's a divination. So now Adrian's going to start getting through his deck, find some answers here. Also, he knows Rocha's deck list. There's only 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, so he can kind of take a little bit of a risk there, I think, and hope that that play ends up working out. Obviously, it didn't, but you know, it's not the craziest thing in the world to see.
Yeah, it is a big risk because Rocha's just seen so many cards over the course of the last few turns.
Yeah, the opportunity resolving, things of that nature. It definitely makes it a risky turn. So now the question is, can Adrian work himself out of this? Because now he's without an Aetherling. And so the Aetherling, you know, racing and back and forth that we had a little bit earlier, well, that's gone.
Yeah. The upside here for Adrian is Jerret's hand's still quite bad. I mean, it's lands, 2 Supreme Verdicts, and 3 Detention Spheres, so.
I would say the problem is that Sullivan doesn't know that.
Yeah. Well, he kind of has to proceed like that's the case anyway.
That's true. That's
it's not
true.
like he can beat a good hand at this point.
That's definitely true. I want to see if he can figure out how to win. 7 mana. Rev for 3. Pushing him up to 10. Again, you have to imagine that Adrian has been here before. Part of the reason, excuse me, it's a rev for 4, but part of the reason that these decks play Elixir, things of that nature, is because it gives you the ability to just keep recycling revelations to actually continuously fog an Aetherling.
Yeah.
And generate a huge advantage.
It's a tough road to go down, but it does occur.
Yeah.
It's not clear if Adrian has that kind of time.
I remember kind of watching a pickup game at Grand Prix Albuquerque between Andrew Cuneo, and I can't remember who he was playing against, but he was playing Revelation Mirror. I think it was against Shahar Shenhar, and basically Shahar had resolved an Aetherling, and Cuneo just said, I can still very easily win from this point, even though he didn't have an Aetherling. And I think he was able to put together a series of turns where he was just casting big Revelations to fog the Aetherling, finding Elixir, gaining 5 life that way, kept chaining and hitting land drops, eventually found a way to win, and then Aetherling's damage that it was dealing was rather irrelevant at that point, which is a weird game state to get yourself into, but I think that's exactly where Adrian's trying to get to.
Classic Cuneos right there.
Oh, yeah. A whole lot of do-nothing.
Yeah.
I think his greatest joy is probably cycling Renewed Faith.
I'm
a
trying
little
to...
life and a card? You kidding me?
Yeah.
It's a dream come true.
How can you print this? Yeah, Andrew is loath to ever put a dedicated win condition into his deck. I'm pretty sure his desired goal is something like, I have an Elixir, which I kind of want anyway for a variety of reasons, 3 or 4 Mutavaults, which I want for a variety of reasons, and then those things can kill you, or I can deck you.
Decking is his primary win condition.
Yeah.
He loves it.
Attacking the library. But again, not with a Millstone, because that's a dedicated way to win the game.
The most stable win condition, attacking the library.
Right.
A Temple of Enlightenment will allow Rocha to scry here. He picked up a Hero's Downfall for his draw. He's going to leave this card, it looks like, on top. A little unsure of himself, though, but it will go on top. In comes Aetherling. The question, again, is for how much?
Your opponent might be able to gain life, but they can very rarely gain deck size in the middle of the match.
That's true.
That's a stable source.
Maybe Elixir is his worst enemy. An attack here for 8. We'll put Sullivan down to 4. Now facing lethal next turn is Adrian. We'll put Sullivan down to 3, excuse me. An attack here from Adrian will make things difficult. Rocha doesn't have to do any sort of pumping next turn.
And knocking Adrian down to 3 means that Elixir no longer saves him.
Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He can rev for 9. Go up to 12.
This is pretty crazy. I mean, I have not watched a game like where Adrian's had to battle like this.
There's a Jace. All right, I wonder what this is going to try to find. Maybe just an Azorius Charm type effect is what he's looking for. Disperse, Cyclonic Rift, something like that. We'll see if it resolves. And I think this is a situation where Rocha has no interest in tapping blue mana, even if he did have a counterspell. So here's another copy of Jace. This is a Hallowed Fountain, and that is the old Azorius Key Rune.
Key Rune rears its ugly head for the first time in the match.
I think it's going to play a role in those sideboarding games.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll see what happens when we get there. Right now, we're in game number 1. Are there matches in game number 3 between Mono Blue and Mono Black Devotion? Sullivan will take a couple cards to the bottom. He knows he's in some trouble. That's for sure. I think desperately digging for an Elixir type card. Azorius Charm. Again, Disperse, Cyclonic Rift. Things of that nature.
He just needs time and mana. And his Aetherling back.
Yeah. There's a Disperse in the main phase. Huh. That's a touch surprising. This is end step. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. So what he's doing is he's clearing end of turn triggers and dispersing so that when Aetherling comes back, it'll be on the beginning of Adrian's turn. So that looked a little bit weird. No, it doesn't look like it's on end step because now it looks like this is an attack. Okay. Yeah. Little unsure of where they were. Okay, because Adrian also looked like he was trying to attack, and that's not the case.
Made up his own combat step.
Yeah.
Can't do.
Never heard of it?
Yeah.
So Aetherling, again, is going to come back at the beginning of Jerret's end step. So this is essentially a fog here. But what the other thing it is it allows Adrian to play around a counterspell, because if he lets Jerret draw a card, it's kind of a disaster. But it also allows Jerret to actually use all of his mana this turn. Or there's also the chance here that he maybe takes a bit of a misstep with how he uses some of his mana. He could tap a little bit too much blue on his own turn and open Aetherling up to something.
I had to imagine Jerret's going to be incredibly cautious about committing blue mana.
Here's a temple. Rocha's going to put that card in the bottom. He's not interested in whatever that was. Again, sitting there with a rather mediocre hand. A bunch of D-spheres, a bunch of verdicts, got the hero's downfall. But no counter magic, no card drawing.
But still has the most critical piece of them all
Yeah.
in the Aetherling.
He's been managing it pretty well thus far. You do see the Jace. If he wants to deploy that. Blue mana is still a little bit sensitive. He does have 2 at the top, but he's going to try to resolve Jace. This is a dissolve. Trying to resolve Jace a little bit risky there, just because dissolve allows Sullivan to scry. That top card's going to go to the bottom, help him try to find whatever he's looking for. So here comes the Ling, and over back to Adrian we go.
But the way that this game is going, I think he has to suspect that he can't just necessarily lean on this Aetherling. Adrian's setting up something big here, so he's got to try to develop his board a little bit. I do agree the cost of having Adrian scry there is huge, but Jerret's hand's so bad besides.
See dissolve go to the grip verdict, and Hollow Fountain going to go to the bottom. Adrian's definitely trying to set up something here.
Yeah, I mean this is the pacing of this game is this feeling that it's actually sort of slipping away from Jerret. His hand doesn't allow him to do anything except pump into this Aetherling, and Adrian might be able to set up the large revs plus Elixir of Immortality sequence that you were alluding to before.
He's going to start with a divination. So hit 1, hit 2.
And it's pretty crazy, you know, when Jerret was able to resolve his Aetherling many moons ago, he had this passing the turn flourish of someone who just felt the game was locked up. And now we're here.
That is a copy of Elixir Immortality. I don't know if you can see the Celestial Flare in Adrian's hand, but he does have one.
It's another fog.
Yep. Elixir is going to allow him to go up to 8, which not so bad. And the interesting thing here, if you're Adrian, and of course we have the benefit of seeing Rocha's hand, you can't really afford to play around almost anything at this point.
Right.
You know, I can't bob and weave around counter magic or revelations. It's like, look, I've got to do my thing. And if he ends up running into something, as we saw with the hero's downfall on that one turn, it's like, okay, fine. You know, that sucks for me, but whatever. Because the water is, rising with the Aetherling. It's lethal just basically every turn. And here it comes again. We're going to see probably Elixir get used here. The question is, do you flare first or do you Elixir first?
Well, if Adrian's going to Elixir anyway, then I would Elixir first.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is because do you want flare back in your deck?
I don't think so. I think Adrian has enough ways to fog an Aetherling. It's probably a lower value draw than most.
So this is your pumps for an attempt at lethal. Sullivan goes up to 8 from the Elixir activation.
Also, Adrian just might be interested in Jerret committing mana into the Aetherling. That might be a bigger priority than getting the Celestial Flare back.
There's the flare. Target player sacrifices an attacking or blocking creature or pays a blue and makes Aetherling go away for a moment, and then it comes back. That's the text on that card.
I like choosing option B there.
Yeah. He chose option B.
Yeah, I like it.
Just good tight play. So Sullivan's going to untap all of these lands again. Let's see if he can work his way through things here.
This is really entertaining to me because, when Aetherling came out and some people were frustrated, this thing's so hard to interact with, the mirror matches. I believe someone on R&D mentioned the card got printed in part because they wanted the mirror matches to end. Because
Sure.
otherwise they would just go on forever.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And here we are. One player's had Aetherling for since turn 8, I think.
Yep.
And here we are on turn 28. And it is
We just
still just has not killed Adrian.
We just want it to end. Well, find a different card.
I mean, Aetherling's not bad. It ends the game a good percentage of the time, but Adrian is making an incredible show of it right now.
It still might end this one.
Yeah.
Sullivan did use Jace there. Azorius Charm in the grip to play the role of Fog, and he just has to pass the turn back. Probably looking for Revelation now. Rocha picks up a card. It's another land.
I mean, he has a lot of mana, and Jerret has no counters. So if Adrian gets into a spot where he gets a big rev, I mean, we could be talking 2 turns worth of life gain.
Yes.
Or if he gets above 16, then it's 3 hits, and now Jerret has to really worry about his ability to actually finish the game.
Yes. And one rev probably finds another rev at this point.
Yep.
So then you're just chaining off revs, and that's his entire game plan here. Presenting lethal yet again. Rocha knows that he has Azorius Charm, however, from that chase. Sullivan is going to maybe attempt to block with Mutavault here? Maybe not. Maybe that's a little too cute.
Well, it's one of those things where Adrian, if he can animate his Mutavault to basically compel Jerret to spend a mana, making it unblockable. So he's determining whether it's worth his mana and also exposing his Mutavault to a removal spell to make Jerret spend additional mana.
A little bit of mana here. Jerret looks like he can finally fire off one of these D-spheres. Have been holding that one for a while. I'm not too surprised to see a fight over this. With the thought process, I think, here from Adrian of, I need another Jace activation. And heck, I could use a Scry, too.
I also think at this point, he senses that Jerret's hand is nonsense. I mean, Jerret's done nothing for several turns now except dump into Aetherling.
Rocha going to play a dual land untapped, go down to 10. Will this be a hero's downfall, or will it be a detention sphere? He says nothing, just bring my Aetherling back. So this means that Adrian's going to get to use Jace again, maybe, because now Rocha's tapping mana on his turn to hero's downfall this. This means Sullivan would actually have to commit mana on his own turn. And he will with a dissolve.
Wow.
Really needs that Jace, apparently.
Yeah.
Time to scry here for Adrian.
Well, again, he needs to find Elixir of Immortality or Revelations or Last Breath plus Mutavault to keep this going because, again, he's staring down lethal in the face of this Aetherling.
Ding, ding, ding. Rev on its own, you say. Tell me more. Not much of a surprise. Taking that. That'll keep his head above water. The question here is, when do you cast it? Now or later? I think you may have to do it now because Rocha only has 2 mana available.
It depends how bad Adrian's hand is. If he already has a bunch of stuff that he doesn't mind discarding, then there's a really strong argument for just doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, Jerret also has an Elixir in his list, so he does not necessarily get decked.
So what you're saying is game 1 will never end?
No, I think that if Adrian starts revving a bunch, he's going to be able to fend off Jerret's Elixir eventually.
Eventually. Hey, we're working our way there. He's tapping some mana right now. Yeah, he's tapping a bunch. This looks like a rev for 5. Yet again, that's been his magic number throughout these games. So he's going to go up to 13. 5 cards coming. Could have done it for more, chose not to. A conscious decision.
Well, again, he's likely to have to discard a lot of these cards anyway, and he needs to be conscious about Jerret's ability to potentially syncopate this rev or something along those lines. So
It's time to discard here for Sullivan. This game is really good. This is a game of someone who refuses to lose.
yeah, I would have tapped ages ago.
Yeah.
But Adrian just knows that there is a path here.
And you can imagine that he's been here before. Here comes Aetherling. We'll see how much it's going to be for. As Rocha just played a Temple of Deceit, put the top card to the bottom. A little bit of pumping or a lot of bit of pumping. We'll see.
And it's very likely Adrian may have conceded or even lost this game if they were playing in the Swiss rounds because, again, Adrian's so conscious of the clock.
I
Like
think in
here, he gets to take his time.
I think in the Swiss rounds when the Aetherling probably died, he just would have conceded. I honestly think that because he just wants to try to finish it up. Yeah, he's going to last breath the Mutavault here. He's going to try to. I think it's going to be good to go. And this last breath is actually going to push him up to 9, which is key. It's a huge turn. That's another turn all in of itself.
Yeah. Now he can actually take a full turn where he doesn't have to fight over the Aetherling at all.
Yeah. Let's say, for example, he finds a Revelation this turn. He can just play a land, pass. You know, Rocha does whatever he does. Sullivan would presumably cast Revelation in his upkeep for the full amount, knowing that he just can't die. Quick update. Unsurprising, Kevin Wang has won his match before Game 1 is ended here. Mono Black is on to the finals to play against one of these two. Here's an Elspeth. So 3 soldiers in play. Adrian says, now I have a way to actually try to win. Or at least put some pressure on you. You are at 10 after all.
Yeah, it's very likely Jerret can answer this again. He's been sitting on cards for forever. It's reasonable to assume that there's some mixture of Supreme Verdicts and Detention Spheres, which is what he has.
He picks up a copy of Ultimate Price.
Big stinks.
Yeah, not the best. There's the D-Sphere. Any fighting to be done over this? The answer is yes. I think this is more than anything 3 mana, I want to scry.
It also could be 3 mana, I want you to spend 3 mana again.
That's true. So D-Sphere gets countered. I think Adrian, looking at his hand, looking at the top card, deciding what he's looking for. Deciding if he wants to put the scry on top or bottom.
And he's getting to the point, again, where if he finds Revelations, it's going to be for so much that he might be able to actually start ignoring Aetherling for multiple turns.
Yeah.
And then he gets...
You put that card on the bottom, so here's another D-Sphere. And this can't come as much of a surprise to Sullivan at all that this is happening, this exchange, because again, he's not really doing anything.
What else would be in his hand at this point?
Yeah. Adrian, let the Elspeth go. Aetherling's unblockable. In it comes. How much is the question?
Please move the Detention Sphere to Jerret's side of the board.
And he's going to make an attack for 8. So Sullivan's going to go down to 1. See if Sullivan drew anything here. Slowly picked up his card. Can afford to attack for 3. Rocha's going to go down to... It's going to be 8. He's going to force Rocha to actually make his Aetherling unblockable. I like it.
I like it.
Make him pay the mana. There's a verdict. Is it a desperation attempt? Oh, man. No rev, no nothing. And he ends up conceding the game. Jerret Rocha is going to win game number 1 off of the back of Aetherling. Esper Control up a game. As we're going to come back to the booth here, as it is trivia time in a very compelling game number 1 between
Yeah,
those
I mean,
players.
Adrian looked dead to rights pretty early on there. I mean, we were at the... I looked at the clock. I believe it was the 12 or 13 minute mark when Jerret had essentially an uncontested Aetherling, or at least Aetherling in a pretty advanced board with all the Elspeth tokens. And we're in minute 40 when Adrian finally submitted. So pretty insane stuff.
He battled on, but was not able to get the job done. As get your Twitters ready, my friends, because we're going to have a trivia question for you. Patrick's going to fire away. Basically, hashtag SCG Premium. Make sure you're following on SCG Live. He'll ask you a question. The winner will win 6 months of Star City Games Premium. Again, we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal round, which is only this match, as Kevin Wang has already won with Mono Black Devotion over Brad Thiessen playing Mono Blue Devotion. So the winner of this match has the honor of playing against Kevin and all of his pack rats. I guess that's it. I guess you can ask.
So we've been talking a lot about all the one-ofs in Adrian's list, or fun-ofs, as we occasionally refer to them. He has 2 artifacts in his deck. One of them is Elixir of Immortality, no surprise. He does have one other singleton artifact, a 3-mana artifact from Return to Ravnica that you don't really see in any of the list. Name that 3-mana artifact.
I think that's the definition of a fun of.
It's the most fun of all of his fun ofs, and there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of fun ofs in this deck, and if you do know the answer, again, hashtag SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live on Twitter, and again, we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal matchup. As we're going to head back to the match, and we'll take a look at some sideboards here. And then these sideboards, since we'll start with Adrian, since he'll be on the play presumably, we've got a Ratchet Bomb, a Keening Apparition, a Blind Obedience, a Debtor's Pulpit, a Domestication, a Celestial Flare, 3 Gainsays, 2 Last Breaths, a Negate, a Render Silent, a Jace Memory Adept, and a Glare of Heresy. Well, we've seen him take some creative approaches to sideboarding when playing this deck against other blue-white decks. We've seen Keening Apparition to come in as a way to handle the Tension Sphere. We've seen Debtor's Pulpit as a way to handle a Resolved Aetherling. We've seen Celestial Flare as a way to fog, potentially, or take care of Mutavault. We've, of course, seen Gainsays to take care of Revelations and Jaces. Negate does the same, as will Render Silent. He's got a Jace of his own. He's got a Glare of Heresy to take care of Elspeths and a Tension Sphere. So I like all of those options.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see the Keening Apparition, the Debtor's Pulpit, the 3 copies of Gainsay, the Negate, the Render Silent, and the Jace. Jerret does have 4 copies of Nightveil Spectre. It wouldn't surprise me if Adrian brought in his copy of Domestication as well.
Or potentially leave in Last Breaths or bring in Last Breaths.
Could be a mixture of all these things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to say for Adrian to leave in a Last Breath, maybe bring in a second one, and bring in his 1 copy of Domestication. I don't think he wants to overload on Last Breath effects in the face of Nightveil Spectre, but I think he wants some answers and the huge upside of Domestication.
On Rocha's side, he's got 3 Blood Baron with Scopas, 4 Nightveil Spectres, as you did mention, along with a Blind Obedience, a Gainsay, 2 Negates, 1 Thoughtseize, and 3 Doomblades. Thoughtseize, Negate, Gainsay, those are an easy 4 to bring in. Nightveil Spectres probably will make it an easy 8. You can make an argument for Blood Baron with Scopa if you think Sullivan's going to board out his Supreme Verdict effects. But at the end of the day, Nightveil Spectre really makes things difficult here on Adrian.
Yeah, I think in the face of Nightveil Spectre, Adrian is going to leave in at least 2 copies of Supreme Verdict.
Okay.
Leaving in all 4 is kind of nonsensical, but I think he wants a little bit of that effect.
Yeah, I mean, Nightveil Spectre means that he has to leave in removal or he doesn't want to otherwise. So I really like what Nightveil Spectre does because, again, it's a situation where it makes it makes things difficult on the opponent for how they want to sideboard. And if one does connect, it might only take 1 or 2 hits to actually end the game.
Yeah, especially if you find something like Dissolve. Also really contorts the way that Adrian has Scry. There's a lot of upside to Nightveil Spectre.
So we do see both players shuffling up here again. This is a rematch from what we saw during round number 4. These players drew earlier in the tournament, able to make it to the elimination rounds, and now they square off yet again. Rocha up a game here with Esper. Sullivan will be on the play. We'll see if he can find what he's looking for as we're in for another long one here.
I'm sure both players are thrilled at the prospect of playing on time matches in the elimination rounds.
Yeah, I would only imagine as such.
All of the playing and sideboarding that one has to do to ensure the games end on time, not a factor here.
Hollowed Fountain, along with an island. An island here for Rocha with his Watergrave. He'll pass the turn back over to Sullivan, who will play a Temple of Enlightenment. He'll take a look. Looks like he's going to leave it on top. Go back to Rocha. Draws a Hero's Downfall. Plays his Watergrave tap. Does have a Thoughtseize. Will he fire it off here? Also has a Dissolve and a Syncopate along with a Negate. So a very interesting hand here for Jerret. Sullivan will take a draw.
Yeah, because Jerret has a copy of Syncopate to fight over something like Jace this turn, he doesn't have to Thoughtseize preemptively to hit Adrian's theoretical Jace. So he can afford and wait on that Thoughtseize on a spot where either he's going to discard or he wants to try to force something through.
Hollow Fountain there from Adrian. Here is a Thoughtseize from Rocha. Sullivan going to turn it face up. Supreme Verdict, Sphinx's Revelation, Disperse, Gainsay, Temple of Deceit.
So he has left in at least 1 copy of Supreme Verdict, obviously.
Yeah, not too much of a surprise when you know Nightveil Spectres and or Blood Barons are coming in.
It's hard for me to imagine that it's not Revelations here, as Adrian's hand at that point allows him to do essentially nothing.
Yeah, then he just becomes all reactive.
Yeah. Not only reactive, but really ill-suited to fight over Blood Baron. I mean, it basically compels him to Supreme Verdict right away.
So Rocha's going to take a look at his hand before making a decision here. He does have to slog through some counter spells if he does take that Sphinx's Revelation. And he's actually got Sphinx's Revelation covered pretty well at this point with Negate and Syncopate. But he is going to take the most powerful card there in Sullivan's hand by far.
Well, Jerret's also no more lands in hand, so even though he can counterspell the Revelations, Adrian might get into a position where he can force it through or use it as bait to resolve something more significant.
Sullivan will draw a card after this Thoughtseize. He'll play a Temple Deceit that Rocha did know about. So, a little scry action. Going to consult his hand before he decides where to place that. And it will stay on top before passing the turn back. Rocha will take a draw. Does he find a land? He does not. He finds a Sphinx's Revelation. You'll notice with his lands, he has no white mana. He's the first one to miss the land drop in this game. The last game, Sullivan was the first one to miss the land drop. And even though he almost won that game, or I mean, he made one heck of a game out of it, he ended up losing. So we'll see if that does hold true. This is a Thoughtseize.
And Jerret thought seizing in part because he's going to have to discard otherwise.
Sullivan looks like he's going to turn it face up again, and he does. Basically the same grip as before. Taking a gainsay. Hitting land drops no problem here for Adrian. Now he just needs to find some action. But again, he's underneath no pressure at this point. He can take his time, even maybe fire up a Mutavault. Looks like we might see a Jace here. This would be a big time to resolve one with Gainsay back up. He's going to change the way he taps, give himself the opportunity to attack with Mutavault.
Although Jerret can fight over this and then attempt to resolve his own Jace next turn. So this does give him a window to open himself up to resolve his own Jace.
Yeah. You'll see a Gainsay here. But I think this all favors Adrian, right? You know, he gets to resolve his Jace, turn over 3 cards. Here's a Sphere, a Glare, and a Dissolve. Dissolve's going to go by itself. If Jerret takes the time to resolve his own Jace to try to find lands, Mutavault will clock that.
Oh yeah, Adrian's definitely in the driver's seat right now.
So Dissolve looks like it's going to go to the grip. The other cards are going to go down to the bottom. There's your Temple, little scry. Adrian's going to take a look at his hand.
Using all of your mana on your own turn and then having the Temple as your land drop has to just be the best feeling.
The dream come true.
Yeah.
Really
Look
good.
how efficient I am.
Opportunity to draw there for Jerret. He's going to go with Hero's Downfall to take care of Jace instead of playing his own Jace. So we'll see if Sullivan can find anything to do on this turn.
Shields are down again. I mean, if Adrian has his Aetherling right now.
Yeah, or picks up a Rev. 3, 4. It's a bunch of mana. 6 minutes. Is this Ling? Speth. That'll work.
Yeah, that's not bad here either.
Especially when your opponent has no white mana.
Yeah.
Doing pretty good. Rocha gonna take a draw. That's another copy of Revelation. He probably has to try to land his Jace now. Yeah.
He has nothing else to do.
Yep.
I mean, you know.
And it's not even great. He's gonna take it down, knowing that it'll die. Here's a Watery Grave. There's a Jace. And that's a Syncopate. Cheers. I know it's gonna be lands versus spells. Could have split it himself for Adrian if he wanted. There's the Water Grave that's going to go to the hand. He's just going to play it tapped. Those cards are going to go to the bottom. That Jace is almost certainly going to die.
Oh, there's no way it gets to Jerret's turn.
Sullivan going to take a draw here. Might be able to steal a quick one. Sideboarding games are typically faster than the other ones, but Rocha has had some real mana issues this go around. Mutavault takes down Jace. Soldier Token's going to go after Rocha. He's going to go down to 13. Architect of Thought going to go to the bin. Elspeth will take up. 3 more soldiers coming.
And Jerret doesn't even have the tools to answer this Elspeth, even if he had white mana.
Picks up a Dissolve and is going to concede the game. So Adrian Sullivan very quickly wins game number 2. And we'll move on to a third one here as the first player to miss a land drop has lost each game.
Well, and you know, it's easy to say Jerret got unlucky there, didn't have white mana, which is part of the story, but he didn't even have an answer in his hand to Elspeth with white mana.
Yeah, had he picked up a white mana, would he have a Detention Sphere or something like that? And the answer is no.
Yeah, he would have been able to potentially resolve Sphinx's Revelation, and that can do its thing, but...
So Adrian, again, able to pick up a very quick one. Rocha will be on the play for game number 3. As we slog it out in our Revelation mirror. We've got players filing in for our Legacy Open right now here in Milwaukee. Should be another nice 9-round affair. As
Most
we
likely.
typically have, yeah. And it'll be fun to see if people come with their Delver decks, their Tree Nemesis decks, or perhaps some Brewski Poos.
I don't think we've hit 10 rounds in a Legacy Open yet this year. I know that I believe we've hit 8 once, and it's been 9 every other time.
I think it has been 9 every other time. Do we have an 8-rounder?
I believe there was one in one of the earlier, Orlando. I believe Orlando was 8 rounds.
Okay. That one, like many of them, won by Bug Delver.
Mm-hmm.
See if that one's able to come back and maybe put a stranglehold on the format. We saw Dylan Donegan make top 8 with that, absolutely decimating Todd Anderson in the quarterfinals. One of the most one-sided beatings I've ever seen, and Todd would even tell you as such. He got his butt kicked.
Well, Todd kept some sketchy ones.
Well, I mean, game 1 maybe had been a sketcher. Game 2, he had some action. I mean, definitely had a game plan, and Dylan had the answer to the game plan both games.
Yeah.
And
it was a bloodbath.
It looked bad.
A bloodbath.
It looked bad. Michael Majors, your champion in that Legacy Open last week in Charlotte, after some fantastic play, really carving a name out for himself.
Yeah, I got to go back and watch the match, and it was incredible. I didn't have to cover the finals because of the way our shift rotation worked, and quite frankly, I just couldn't bear being in that hall anymore after, talking about Magic for whatever it was, 35 hours over 3 days.
We went deep in the night on Sunday.
I hit my ceiling, and I'm periodically checking Twitter to see, I'm waiting for the SCG announcements. Like, congratulations to whoever who wins, because, that match got started at 11:30 in the evening. That's when I left, roughly. And
sure.
1:15 in the morning, the announcement finally goes up.
It's the long grind. There's nothing like being there's nothing like being in a giant convention center hall with the champion and nobody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, here, stay here for your photos, and now we're gonna pack up the ship and get ready to move on.
Yeah, it's the coverage team, the champion, and then the cleaning staff at the convention center.
Yeah, just waiting for us to get out.
Exactly.
But it was a lot of fun last weekend watching that final match between Majors and Braverman, and Majors able to play some borderline perfect Magic, which is not something I say often.
He has really impressed me.
Yep.
That combined with the Atlanta Open, just a really impressive run.
All right, Mr. Rocha, you were on the play. Let's see what happens here in game number 3 between Esper Control and Blue-White Control. It's all about land drops, my friends.
Well, in the post-board games, I actually think it's a lot to do with the structure of your deck, too. It's interesting because these black-white threats become a lot better because both players are bringing in gainsays as well.
This is true. If anything, it's kind of interesting that, if Night Veil Spectre was just black, 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 I think it would be busted in the mirror. But because it's blue and you can gainsay it, it's a little worse. It's still pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's often quite good, yeah.
See, Rocha's got a couple of lands in his hand already. Gala Shrine, a couple of planes. Adrian's going to play a Temple of Enlightenment to put the top card to the bottom. We're underway here as a Temple of Silence.
You know what I really like about Adrian's list more than anything else? He's not messing around with any sort of conversion plan. He doesn't have this Archangel Thune thing going on in his sideboard. No Soldier or Pantheon, no Burmaz. He's just has the right answers in the post-board games. He's not trying to redefine his deck.
This is what he's been comfortable doing for some time now. He plays Mutavault as his second land. Now this is a Temple of Enlightenment as his third, so I was a little scared there. Maybe he didn't have a third land, but he does. He's just going to pass the turn back over to Rocha, who will take a draw. There's a Jace. Does he have a second blue? Nope.
Colored mana has been an issue for Jerret all 3 games.
Yes.
I mean, game 1, he was able to navigate it, but he had a lot of Godless Shrines in the Aetherling game, and it was almost problematic for him in a couple spots.
It's a real cost to doing business. Yeah. He's just going to pass the turn back over to Sullivan. There's another blue mana, Temple of Deceit. Now, Rocha does have his Aetherling in his hand right now, so that's probably his game plan here early, is to try to get that into play. Sullivan draws his card as Temple of Deceit. He wants to scry. He'll take a look. That one's going to the bottom. He's just going to pass the turn back with the shields up. Rocha will untap. He'll take a draw. That's a Jace for him. Will he fire off with maybe a Thoughtseize here? The answer looks to be a resounding yes.
This is a good spot for Thoughtseize. He can follow it up with something this turn, which is the key thing.
Sullivan looking at his hand. Does he want to fight over this? Does he just set them down?
He's usually been pretty fast to say yes, so he's mulling something over here for sure.
It is pretty tough to fight over Thoughtseize because it's going to accomplish exactly what Rocha wants it to regardless. And it looks like Sullivan's ready to do a little bit of fighting. This is a Render Silent. This is a good use of Render Silent. Negate is fine. Yeah, but now Rocha doesn't get to resolve something.
Yeah, Jerret does not get to follow up this turn, which is just really nice.
So
that's a sideboarded fun of.
Pretty fun there. See the grip, Revelation, Jace, Syncopate, Domestication, Cyclonic Rift, Essence, Scatter. A ragtag group of characters in Sullivan's hand.
Well, what's important about this hand is that it definitely, if you're in Jerret's seat, Night Veil Spectre is not on the table. You're looking at Essence Scatter, you're looking at Domestication, forget about it. He's going to have to win the game with Aetherling or with Planeswalkers or something along those lines. Unless he's willing to really attack these cards, but that seems like a really risky way of doing business.
Especially when there's no Spectre in his hand.
Right.
At this point, so I think he's going to ignore this Domestication. There's a chance he might ignore Essence Scatter, but he does have a copy of Aetherling in his hand, so maybe he takes the Essence Scatter. There's definitely a decision to be made here, and he's going to take his time in making it. As he does look at his hand, you see he's got a Jace, he's got an Aetherling, a couple planes over there. It would be easy to just select the Revelation and move on. That's what looks like. That's what he's going to do.
Correct.
After, I mean, he gave it a lot of thought.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
This is still a tough turn. Still a tough turn.
Going to play a planes and pass the turn back. See if Sullivan finds his 6th land to play. Will he try to resolve a Jace here, maybe? Picked up an elixir for the turn. I'm sure Adrian would just like to leave his shields up. It's not always that easy.
It's just tough when you're playing against a deck with Thoughtseizes to be super reactive.
There's an elixir. And he'll be the first one to miss a land drop. Rocha picks up another land. Could see him try to resolve Jace here.
Not a bad spot for Jace.
No, not at all.
Again, Rocha is pretty much committed to letting it die in the face of Adrian's Mutavault, but that isn't necessarily bad when Adrian's the one who's pinned on mana right now.
Yep. He'll play a planes. This looks to be a Jace, and he's able to play around Syncopate. Big question here is if this does resolve, does he want a plus or minus? He's going to go with Syncopate for 3, put the shields down. Jace is fine. Minus it is, so it can die to Mutavault next turn. There's a Night Veil Spectre ×2 and a Watery Grave. And oddly enough, that Night Veil Spectres are basically blank cards.
Yeah, I expect Adrian to split this just land v Night Veils.
Yeah.
Although now with Jerret actually making his land drops, it's not clear that Adrian will simply get to resolve Domestication if Jerret decides to play one of these.
That's true.
So their value has gone up, but splitting Watery Grave, Night Veil Spectre against Night Veil is also rough. I guess he's going to do it, but that's a tough split right there. Because there's a good chance that Jerret has no interest whatsoever in the Night Veils.
Well, Adrian gets the opportunity to resolve his Jace here. No, I think he's probably going to try to do is resolve Jace, find a land, activate Mutavault, kill the other Jace. Wouldn't be surprised if that's his game plan overall.
It does incur a huge risk in the face of Jerret's potential Aetherling, which we know he has in hand.
Plains, Island, Plains. How to chop them. Plains versus. I think for Adrian, you got to want those 2 lands. He does. Again, Adrian doesn't know that Rocha has the Aetherling in his hand already.
It would require a lot of discipline for Adrian to not be willing to kill the Jace here. And he doesn't really have a choice. It's just too good of a spot, but he's incurring a huge risk, and Jerret does have the Aetherling.
There's the Ling. And you see Adrian. Gosh darn it.
Yep.
Now we got to go through this game again, huh? Rocha just going to pass the turn back.
There's a calculated risk there by Sullivan. I like it. Again, he's pinned on mana. He kind of just has to use his mana each turn in that kind of spot. But
Yeah, his hand is pretty forced there.
yeah.
Adrian going to pick up another copy of Hollowed Fountain. He's going to cash in Jace. And he's got some real work to do now.
Yeah. Sometimes they have it.
Temple, Debtor's Pulpit,
Oh.
and a Temple. Sometimes he has it.
All right.
Give me that Debtor's Pulpit, thank you much.
Don't mind if I doozy.
I think it might be time to try to resolve that.
Well, he has to make it. I mean, this is a pretty good spot again. Jerret's shields are more or less down.
Yeah.
If you're in the hall, please come to the stage. James Katz, if you're in the hall, please come to the stage.
Again, it's so easy when we get to see the cards in Jerret's hand. We see the Spectre, we see the Jason, a couple of lands, and it's just like, yeah, play a land, cast the Pulpit, get moving. He's going to play Domestication. Interesting. Target this. Knowing that Rocha has a copy of Nightfield Spectre, he plays Domestication.
I think. I mean, there's no mana tap, so I'm not quite sure what's happening right now.
Maybe it's showing off Domestication. Maybe Jerret was wondering exactly what it did.
Sure, okay. I mean, Adrian's done a fair amount of shortcutting in the tournament, but simply not tapping lands and putting a Domestication on the table
Is this resolve?
Sir, you need to spend mana for that.
Do I?
Sir, I'm going to need you to spend some mana.
Okay, so the question there was if he domesticates the Aetherling, if he can keep it by shrinking it. Because the timing on all of that stuff is a little bit weird.
Sure.
There's no reason to get cute, Adrian. You've already got the answer. Just play the Pulpit. Looks like that's what he might do. Maybe not. Let's see how he's going to tap here. Yeah, there's the Pulpit. Puts it on a Plains. The old Aetherling stopper.
Yep.
He's
Back from block constructed.
Yep. And better than ever. Not sure what Rocha picked up there for his draw step.
I believe it was a negate.
Okay. It's a good one to pick up. I like here. Sullivan will take the first hit.
Yep.
He wants to be able to leave up or at least bluff some sort of counter magic at this point. Rocha going to play a Jace here, it looks like. Yep. There's your Architect of Thought. Up or down is the question. Will Adrian even try to fight? He won't. So, yeah, okay. Thoughtseize. Okay. Godless Shrine, Elspeth. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Thoughtseize versus here.
Well, Adrian's hand could potentially be pretty soft to Elspeth. He has individual threats covered for the time being because of the Pulpit. Thoughtseize appears to be the most threatening card in the abstract.
So he's going to consult his hand before splitting these bad boys up. Decision-making time. As we... Elspeth versus. Wow, that's going to go to the grip. Thoughtseize is going to go to the bottom. I'm a touch surprised. But I agree with you. This could be a situation where Thoughtseize is not that scary. See, Jerret's going to play an untapped Watery Grave. Maybe he's going to try to deploy Nightfield Spectre with a negate backup, or just wants mana.
I don't think he wants to be forced to fight that kind of fight.
Sure.
It's really risky. I mean, if he gets into a fight over Nightveil Spectre and Adrian takes it, then now all of a sudden Adrian has a Nightveil Spectre. Aetherling can't stop it.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do like there is Rocha can afford to take 2 damage to represent whatever, or just protect his Aetherling a little more. Adrian gonna untap. No use for Elixir just yet, as he will draw a card. Now Pulpit feels a lot more usable since he has so much more mana. He's gonna start by activating Mutavault, getting in after Jace. Rocha gonna consult his hand before losing his Jace, so job well done by Mutavault. Sullivan with a Glare of Heresy in his hand, gonna play a Hollow Fountain tapped. He just passes the turn. Back to Rocha, who will take a draw. That's a Temple.
It's really great watching all of Adrian's weirdo cards come up. You know, the Render Silent was weirdly relevant as it prevented Jerret from resolving a Jace earlier in the game. Mm-hmm. This Debtor's Pulpit is allowing Adrian to keep fighting where a lot of blue-white decks would simply be dead on arrival when Aetherling showed up. So the card choices matter.
I mean, all these one-ups that he has, again, when you can go through your deck as much as he can, and they are all very situational one-ups, but the situation that you get yourself into, they're all really good. The card choices definitely matter, as you said. Pulpit looking incredible this game. Might be the only card that could actually save him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope.
Most players just have a pithy needle in one of those slots, but you know, Adrian, if he ever resolves his own Aetherling, he wins the game most likely.
And think
Which is not the case with pithy needle in play.
Think about all the things that Pulpit can tap down: Mistcutter Hydra, Storm Breath Dragon. I'm sure it's done a lot of work for Adrian over the course of just this tournament and other tournaments.
Yeah.
That's why it's still there.
Blood Baron.
Yeah. Bunch of mana being tapped here. This is an Elspeth. Might have a fight over this one. We'll see. Adrian does have a copy of Glare of Heresy in his hand right now.
Yeah. Adrian just might say this is fine.
And it is fine. So 3 soldiers are going to come in.
He's got a Mutavault back on defense. He has a Glare of Heresy in hand. It's not a pressing need for him to fight over this Elspeth.
See if Sullivan has anything to do on his on Rocha's end step. He's gonna shuffle an elixir. Gonna get a little bit of life. Move forward.
I think it's more of an issue of just Adrian's mana is pretty tied up. Yeah. So this is a good spot to just catch that in.
It's not the best elixir, obviously, but I agree with you. It's all about mana efficiency at this point. Maybe he's got big plans for the next couple of turns. He will untap. That plane is pretty much locked up by the Pulpit. 3, 4, 5, 7 mana otherwise to use. So Sullivan's going to take a draw. There's Pulpit greater than sign Aetherling. Now he's got to deal with Elspeth. This is a Glare of Heresy. We're probably going to have a bit of a fight over this, I imagine. I guess Rocha gets to decide if he wants to have a fight over this. This is a negate.
It is challenging insofar as, you know, what are the odds that this Elspeth is actually good? You know what I mean? Like Adrian can only fight this one fight.
Yeah. All right. Looks like Glare gets taken care of. Adrian pulls another card to his hand pretty quickly. I wonder if he's got something he wants to use here. He's sitting at a fairly healthy 21.
Yeah, he's got time. But these negates are so valuable for Jerret because at a moment's notice, you know, Adrian could just be resolving Sphinx's Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose against this Debtor's Pulpit, he does need Elspeth to power through.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Take a look here at the Graveyard Will Sullivan. Trying to figure out exactly what Rocha may have in his hand at this point. Going to play an untapped Hallowed Fountain. Going to go down to 19. This might be maybe an attempt to resolve Jace, potentially?
May just be saying go.
Yeah? He's going to reaching for mana. This might be a little bit more than go. Yeah, rev for 2 right now. Not the biggest rev. Actually going to be for 3, excuse me. Make it 4. Okay, for 4.
Yeah, Adrian's got light to play with.
All right.
He can afford to do this.
Feeling now is the time. 3, 4. Wow. Maybe sensing a little bit of weakness in Jerret's hand. Gets a bunch of cards, may or may not have to discard. Goes with 23 life, deciding, okay, the motions you can deal your next turn is 8, 9, 10, 11. And if you do that, you're basically committing your turn. Let's see what Rocha can pick up. That's a Syncopate. Good time to resolve that rev for Adrian.
Yeah,
yeah.
Timed it really nicely there. I also like that Adrian's shown a willingness to just say, yeah, Aetherling can hit me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Not using the Debtor's Pulpit every turn.
The card is much more important. This is the attack for 11. Rocha gonna pump up the jam on Elspeth. 3 more soldiers coming out there. Sullivan's at 12. But he got all those cards. He gets to untap all this mana. And now he gets to act. He knows Rocha has that Night Veil Spectre. Doesn't know a ton else as you see him counting mana. Always a comforter feeling.
Yeah.
When your opponent's just counting all their mana. How many things can I do this turn to ruin you? Just passes the turn back. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is maybe a Fated Retribution or something of that nature.
Not a bad spot for it, certainly.
Yep. I think that's what this is. Cyclonic Rift with Overload. That's a Syncopate. Is this some sort of way for Adrian to fight back? It is. It's a negate. And so Aetherling's going to bounce out. Cyclonic Rift is going to pick up a bunch of stuff. A makeshift fog this turn.
Yep.
Is what this is. It also forces, if Jerret wants to redeploy, he'd have to play a land
and tap out.
To put Elspeth back on the table. And if not, Adrian is so happy with this exchange because, all right, your Aetherling's back. Great, I've already got that answered. Let me tap that.
Yeah. I mean, Adrian's in a position where he can actually start just beating down with Mutafall.
Yeah. So another fun of in Cyclonic Rift, playing a role. Adrian tapping some mana very quickly here to cast a Divination, getting a little bit deeper into his deck.
And Adrian told me, to him it's close enough to Fated Retribution in the spots where you need Fated Retribution. And the flexibility is worth so much. And lo and behold, I'm sure that if Jerret wants to respend a turn deploying Elspeth here, Adrian is fine with that.
So you see Elixir come down. Debtor's Pulp is going to tap the Aetherling. Does Rocha want to try to resolve Elspeth yet again? He does have a Gainsay in his hand to back it up with. Looks like Sullivan's ready to have a bit of a battle over this. This is a Render Silent. That is a Gainsay. Will we have another fight? Thumbs up. In comes Elspeth. So basically the same situation as we had prior, but it gave Adrian a couple more turns to get deeper into his deck.
Yeah.
See if he wants to use the Elixir again, push himself up to 17 because of mana efficiency reasons.
Seems like a good spot.
You see him looking at his hand, considering the decision, I think. And he will.
Yeah, if you're Jerret here, there's got to be this feeling of what on earth has gone on. Game one resolved Aetherling with Elspeth in play with numerous tokens. I mean, it looked, no chance that he loses. And Adrian battled and battled and battled and barely lost. But you could get the feeling that the game was slipping away from Jerret.
Yeah.
If Adrian finds another Revelations or something. Game two, Adrian wins fairly comfortably. Now, game three, the same thing happened again. He was able to resolve an Aetherling uncontested, and it's not even clear he's winning the game right now.
Divination going to start Sullivan's turn. You see he's got a Syncopate in his hand. The Pulpit at the ready for the Aetherling, sitting at a pretty comfortable 17 life. He's got to work his way through this Elspeth, and he's got Nightveil Spectre taken care of already. This might be a Detention Sphere. It's actually going to be the old Azorius Key Rune, providing it some more mana.
I'll tell you, if Adrian stabilizes this board, that Key Rune is going to start going beatdowns.
Yep. And to the sky, nonetheless. Rocha's going to take a draw. Again, Sullivan knows he has Nightveil Spectre, doesn't know the rest. And Rocha really doesn't have much else.
Yeah, he has a land and a Nightveil that he can't cast.
Yeah. Of course, the reason he can't play the Nightveil Spectre is because of the domestication in Sullivan's hand. So Debtor's Pulp is going to tap down the Aetherling. Soldier tokens may or may not attack. And it looks like they're going to just hold steady. Cowards. They're basically free.
They're essentially free.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Jerret might need all of them to win with an Elspeth emblem.
That's definitely true at this point. Sullivan picked up a negate for the turn. The question is, does he have an answer to Elspeth? He's counting his mana again. It's never the best feeling.
Listen, of course, I'm not the biggest Control fan on earth, but watching Adrian do this is a clinic.
He's comfy. He's comfy. He's going to play a Fated Retribution. I don't know if this is going to be on his turn or not. We saw him count his mana because he could be casting this on his turn to scry, or he could be doing on Rocha's upkeep, and it was on his upkeep. See, Rocha picks up a copy of Jace. He's going to play this. I wouldn't be surprised to see Adrian fight over this. He's got to be sensing a little bit of weakness. He knows the one card is a Knife Spectre. He just doesn't know what the other card is, and here's a Gainsay to counter that. Yeah, you have to imagine he's sensing weakness.
Yes. And here's the thing, he has a Syncopate, so he very likely has, even if Jerret draws Sphinx's Revelation, he probably has that covered.
Yeah.
Because Jerret can't rev for a lot and play around Syncopate.
Has Negate too in his hand.
Yeah.
So pretty easy counter there. The question I think is, do you want to Negate versus Gainsay? And he obviously went with Gainsay there. Now he's going to resolve a Jace.
Oh my God.
There's one of those fun ofs.
Adrian.
Turn over a Syncopate, take a draw. That's a Temple. Now Jace Memory Adept is here.
I am just blown away by this game and this match.
Revelation, the draw for Rocha. Would you like to attack? Because you're not allowed. Debtor's Pulpit will tap that down.
Nope.
That's a Hollow Fountain that's going to come into play untapped. A little more information picked up here for Adrian. Because one, okay, Hollow Fountain's coming into play untapped. All right, well, I've got an idea of what you probably have now. I already know you have a Spectre. Chances are, if you're playing your land untapped, you have a Revelation that you're trying to resolve, and I've got that on lock as well. As you see, Rocha's tapping a bunch of mana here, trying to figure out exactly how much he wants to rev for. Adrian looking at his counter spell, saying, it doesn't matter. You pick an amount, I'm going to counter it.
Yeah, I think the thing here is Rocha's just trying to leave up enough mana where he doesn't have to worry about Syncopate.
Yep. And he did that, but Negate said, nice try. And all Rocha can do is pass the turn back over to Sullivan, who will untap everything up to and including an Azorius Key Rune. That Debtor's Pulpit land may want to untap as well. There we go. You're going to need that one later. He's going to take a look now at Rocha's library. When they're counting that, we might be hitting the 0 button on Chase now. It's been a little while since we've seen this.
We might be switching gears right now. I'm disappointed because I really wanted to see the Azorius Key Rune come across for lethal. This is not a disappointing way for the game to end either.
Yeah, one of those fun ups will get the job done. It just depends on which one Adrian wants to use. 33 cards in the deck.
So 10 plus draw step, and then 10 plus draw step.
So plus 10 plus draw step. Lights out, Gorilla Radio. What do you want to draw?
Yeah, so if that's a 3-turn, that's a 4-turn kill essentially. Yep. So he's still in 3-turn land. The next turn he gets to draw a card this turn. And he has a Revelation in his hand.
Is that card good?
It's pretty good right now. Adrian does have infinite mana essentially, so.
There's an Elspeth. And I like this because now he's coming from all sorts of angles. I've got Elspeth Soldier tokens, I've got Jace threatening you, I've got Azorius Key Rune, I've got Mutavault, I've got counter spells in my hand. Here's a couple of soldiers. This has been a master display.
This is one of the best games and matches I have ever watched doing SCG Live.
There's the Detention Sphere. Choose wisely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got 3 real targets right now with Detention Sphere between Pulpit, Elspeth, and Jace.
Yeah.
3 incredibly real targets. And that assumes that this card's going to resolve.
Yeah. And Adrian might just say, okay, whatever. I mean, things get hairy enough if Debtor's Pulpit leaves where maybe he would want to fight over if he could.
So there goes the Pulpit. Gonna pass the turn back, will Rocha. Let's see if Sullivan has anything he wants to resolve here. Again, Rocha with just 1 card in his hand. It's a Nightfell Spectre he can't cast. So Sullivan's gonna untap everything. You see Rocha taking a look in his graveyard here, all the resources that he's used. Sullivan will take a draw. Can he close things out here quickly? I think he may have picked up a copy of Disperse.
Disperse is not here. Again, another Aetherling Fog.
Yep. He can Fog Aetherling, he can bounce the Detention Sphere, put the Pulpit back on a land and tap something if he wants to go that route. He could also, if he wants to get really creative, activate Jace with a 0, bounce the Jace, activate Jace with a 0 again. He's gonna start by attacking with the soldier tokens, gonna put Rocha down to 9. Elspeth is gonna tick up, 3 more soldiers coming. Again, he does have a Revelation in his hand, so he can take a pretty conservative approach here. See how he wants to use Jace. It's like 13 land out there for Adrian as he does count them. 13 sources of mana. You count the key rune as a land at this point.
Jace is such a sweet one-of in this sideboard.
It's just anytime
Another one-of that's mattered.
anytime you see a deck from a very good player with a lot of one-ofs that they've been playing for a while, that's no accident.
No.
And here's a Rev. It's a pretty small one.
Yeah, at this point, Adrian just needs to keep some amount of mana up to give himself insurance from Jerret drawing the best possible, or if there's some small percentage chance that Jerret is sitting on something significant. Adrian, again, ahead enough where he can afford to be somewhat flexible.
Yeah, that's the glare. Glare's going to take care of that. He's going to get his pulpit back. Put that on the plains. Again, he cast that glare a little earlier in the game, but it got shuffled back in via Elixir of Immortality. And use Mutavault now to play the Elixir again. Be able to reuse those resources if you'd like. Very efficient with his mana. Has not used Jace just yet. Might be time to push 0.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I mean, Adrian's threatening a lethal attack next turn.
That's true.
So there's just no reason to.
Yeah, he's got 6 tokens, Key Rune and Mutavault. That would be exactly lethal. Wasn't sure if he was going to go the damage route, if he was going to go the mill route, but when you have all these options afforded to you, Rocha will take a draw step. It's a pretty good place to be living in, and Jerret Rocha is going to concede the game. Adrian Sullivan is going to move on to the finals with blue-white control in a master class of how to play this deck against an Esper deck.
That was insane. That was insane.